As the coronavirus killed more than 200,000 Americans, President Trump pretended that it was no big deal. But then it landed him in the hospital on supplemental oxygen, pumped full of steroids and a cocktail of aggressive medications, grimacing while he breathed with obvious effort as he arrived home at the White House last night. That no big deal of a coronavirus showed that the White House and its inadequate precautions were just an opportunity waiting to be seized. But the president, supported by helicopter transport and the best medicine that your taxpayer dollars can buy.
Oh, by the way, that health care that President Trump received was entirely paid for by the government and taxpayers. So in other words, a president that is denouncing socialist medicine is now taking full advantage of it. And not just that, but he is getting medicine that no one else is getting.
Is still unencumbered by science or fact. And now he's trying to sell his infection as the sacrifice of a true leader.
As your leader, I had to do that. I knew there's danger to it, but I had to do it. I stood out front. I led. Nobody that's a leader would not do what I did.
A leader would not do what you did? I think most leaders would never do what you did because it is stupid. Every single person you're coming in contact with has to go into quarantine. When you rode around in a car at the hospital, everyone in that car now has to be quarantined for 14 days and worry if they're going to get sick and die.
And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune. I don't know.
You're right about one thing, Trump. You don't know. You don't know science. You don't know more than your doctors. In the hospital, you tried to tell the doctor that you didn't need oxygen. They're the ones reading your stats. They know if you need oxygen or not. Now you're trying to say that you're immune. Doubtful. Instead, you're probably setting yourself up for a relapse. And every time you open your mouth, coronavirus is coming out of it. You are now a super spreader. You have been a super spreader even when you knew that you had been exposed. You continued to put yourself around other people and infect them as well.
Leading people off a cliff is technically leading, but it's also stupid and deadly.
It was the cruelest visual yet. Yesterday's tweet was the cruelest tweet yet. And I truly do wonder how many people he killed with his actions yesterday.
It feels as if he's mocking, and I really am calling on others to just stand up.
So where did he come up with this brilliant argument?
This is like when the general gets wounded by the invisible enemy, goes and gets patched up, and then gets right back to the front line.
No, it's not the same, because Trump is infectious. If a soldier gets a wound and it's patched up and he goes back out to the front line, he is not spewing an infectious disease to everyone around him. And that is what Trump is doing. So no, it is not the same.
Except Trump hasn't assumed the risk that he is demanding Americans take. He's not fighting on your battlefield. To put this into terms that he would understand, he's doing what we refer to in golf as sandbagging. He's evening the odds against the game, and he's lying. He's surrounding himself by people who get rapid coronavirus tests before they get to see him, and yet he's still got it. He's not personally willing to take on the risk of sitting in a classroom full of fifth graders, or in a factory side by side with coworkers, or behind the cash register at a grocery store. He's not standing in a crowded bar or the buffet line at a restaurant. He stood far away from the crowds that he wanted gathered so that he could absorb their adulation as they stood chock-a-block, talking and shouting and breathing all over one another.
Yes, that's what happens at the rallies. all of the crowds, all the audiences are sitting right next to each other, spreading the virus to each other. Even at the Supreme Court nominees hearing, everyone sitting outside right next to each other was not protected. All you have to do is turn your head and breathe on the person next to you and they get infected. At the rally that Trump went to in Minnesota, when he knew that hope had been exposed, he went knowing that. People that saw him and took pictures of him came in one by one. They had to stand way far away. They had to be tested before they could, and they were not allowed to touch the president. So he understands that he was infected.
He's mocked masks, which the CDC calls the key weapon that we have to fight the virus.
Smart Health Talk has said from the beginning that masks save lives. People are worried that they are having to do this for someone else. No, we are all in this together. When you wear a mask, you are protecting yourself and other people.
Just saw their highest 7-day average of new cases. Governor Andy Beshear urging his state to mask up.
Now's our test. Test of values, test of faith. Are we willing to live for other people?
This governor likens wearing a mask with living for others. This is not the right message. When you wear a mask, you are living for yourself, everyone you love, and others. This is not just about living for other people.
So the strategy now is cast his likely self-inflicted infection as a strength and downplay COVID's lethality, as he did just this morning while he is still not out of the woods, according to his doctor. Trump, again, comparing it to the flu. And where did he get that from?
Number one, it's very contagious. And number two, it's not nearly as lethal as the experts told us it was going to be.
This is serious. It's very infectious. But it's probably not going to, almost certainly not going to kill you.
People that think coronavirus doesn't kill you as much as the flu, we already have as many deaths as like the past 4 years of the flu combined. So yes, it is killing more people.
Fair, balanced, and unafraid to be dangerously ignorant. It will probably almost certainly not kill you, except when it certainly does, like it did to the more than 210,000 Americans who had died in nearly 8 months, severely outpacing the flu. Just look at the past decade. During a bad flu season, which lasts about 7 months, the flu kills about 60,000 Americans. In about the same number of months of coronavirus, we're at almost 4 times that right now. The number of COVID deaths have surpassed the past 5 flu seasons combined, according to the CDC. And according to the president as well, because remember, this is how he described coronavirus privately back in February.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
He tells the truth in private, but he tells the public the opposite, and Fox backs him up. Its most prominent voices promoting a dying by COVID is okay theme, as they tell millions of their viewers, many of whom are older and more vulnerable to this virus, this.
The median age of death for coronavirus in this country is 78 years old. As it happens, 78 is also the life expectancy for all people in this country. In other words, it's dangerous to be an old person who has the coronavirus. It's also dangerous to be an old person, period. At some point, we're all going to die. Dying is the central fact of life. Unfortunately, a secular society has no answer for that, no explanation, and no comfort to give us in the face of it. So no wonder we're so terrified.
The median age of a Fox News viewer is 67 years old. That's the median age. And Tucker Carlson is bringing his show to them from the comfort and isolation of a studio where health precautions are taking place. Well, perhaps he should listen to someone that he admires very much, who said this in March.
People you trust, people you probably voted for, have spent weeks minimizing what is clearly a very serious problem. No doubt these people have good intentions, as they say this, many of them anyway. They may not know any better. Maybe they're just not paying attention. Or maybe they believe they're serving some higher cause by shading reality. And there's an election coming up. Best not to say anything that might help the other side. We get it. But they're wrong. The Chinese coronavirus is a major event. It will affect your life. And by the way, it's definitely not just the flu.
That's right. Before Tucker Carlson subscribed to the no big deal school of BS coronavirus thought, he told his viewers about the dangers of it. What the president appears to be calling for here is herd immunity, and his TV buddies are pushing it. Go out, be normal, they say, but in parentheses, the part they don't say. A lot of you will die, but not percentage-wise, just hundreds of thousands of you. No big deal, right? What they're really saying is that some people will have to be sacrificed, but they're not raising their hands. They're raising the hands of Americans who have given them their trust. Case in point, the campaign says it won't change a thing about its rallies.
We're going to make sure that we take everybody's temperature as they're coming into events. We're going to give everybody a mask. We're going to give everybody hand sanitizer.
Which is what you've been doing.
We're going to encourage people to wear their mask. And you know what? That's been a very safe and very responsible thing to do. And that's what we've done from the beginning of this. We're taking this very seriously. And so we've always been leading from the front on that.
And Team Trump is still mocking masks.
That's a political statement to scare people wearing that mask. You do not need that mask when you're standing on a podium and nobody is within half a football field of you. I don't wear masks as much as probably I should. And I haven't gotten COVID either. There are a lot of people on both sides of that.
I mean,
what they claim is science is nonsense.
Rudy Giuliani, mind you, coughed through that interview. And it's not just masks that Trump and his sycophants mock. For tomorrow night's VP debate, the commission decided to put plexiglass between Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence, who is rebuffing CDC guidelines to quarantine despite his exposure to COVID-positive patients. Mike Pence's spokeswoman mocked it. She said, quote, if Senator Harris wants to use a fortress around herself, have at it. Katie Miller, who was infected herself this summer, is mocking a campaign that has been more careful and hasn't had an outbreak, like it's a weakness.
No infections in the Biden campaign. And Kamala Harris actually ordered plexiglass between her and Pence. Considering that Pence has been exposed to Trump and should actually be quarantined for 14 days, I think that was a pretty good decision.